even when I'm down. Got my head in the clouds and my feet on the ground. I got big dreams, gonna make them true.
Yeah, we got big dreams here in the Genius Lab. Toby Christensen here, and I am so glad you're here with me on this podcast today where we help you realize your greatness. I'm in the Genius Lab studio and having a good time today. Got the pooches in here. They're all sleeping on the floor while I'm making music and doing this podcast. So I've been talking over and over and over about realizing your greatness. And we've talked about what's your fault, what's not your fault, guilt and shame, and just eradicating all that crap and clearing you out so that you can see the truth of who you are. Today, I want to talk to you about post-traumatic stress. Now, if you are in the psychological community, you don't say post-traumatic stress, you say PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And talk about adding insult to injury, right? For years, decades, in the mental health field, post-traumatic stress has been considered a psychological disorder. And it is caused by experiencing a traumatic event, whether you see it or experience it yourself. And as my friend from the VA says, post-traumatic stress cannot be cured. It can only be treated with drugs and therapy. So basically, if you get it, you're completely screwed. And for the rest of your life, you have to take medication and do therapy. Okay. I don't buy it. There are an amazing group of doctors in Florida and an organization called 220 that has really just jumped into this with both feet. And they have done a tremendous amount of research and are basically turning the psychological community upside down. And I freaking love it. Simply because I have nothing wrong with the psychological community. I've benefited tremendously from psychological help. When I was going through my divorce, I had a therapist that was fantastic. I grew tremendously from that situation. But then there's the other part of psychology that, when you have those letters after your name and you know everything, and something is set in a certain way, there's very little opening for change. So I'm working with 220 currently. I've been certified in their post-traumatic stress treatment, and it's called tactical resilience process. And the thing that it states is that post-traumatic stress is not a psychological disorder. It is a neurological injury. And I'm like, whoa, first time I heard it, it blew my mind. It's like, well, injuries heal, right? You break your leg, you reset the bone and it heals. You cut yourself, you have an injury, it heals. The thing that's so powerful about this process, the tactical resilience process, is that number one, it taps into your resilience. Number two, it eliminates in the first test anyway. I'm not gonna make false claims. That's not right. But these doctors from and you can see all the data at 220.org. These doctors, Dr. Cordova and her team, did an amazing job. They started off with 100 patients. Okay, and they rated them all based on all of the clinical ramifications of where they were at with their post-traumatic stress, and all of them qualified in spades for getting the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress. And then they ran them through the protocol, one to three times, tested them again. Every single person was below the level of anxiety or stress that would indicate post-traumatic stress. And then they tested them months later. They continued. 100% of the people in this trial went from severe to extreme post-traumatic stress to not qualifying for the diagnosis. Okay. And months later, they were still at that lower state. It's a fantastic process that the beauty is you don't have to relive the event. I have a friend who's a therapist, and she does EMDR. And I go, well, how does that work? And she goes, well, it works pretty well. Some of the times it works really well. Some of the time, after a few months, you see some change, and and then sometimes people don't respond to it very well. And I talked to a friend of mine who was doing EMDR, and he said, well, I've been at it for almost a year, and yeah, I feel a little bit better. And we worked with the tactical resilience process, and I go, okay, now how do you feel? This after one session. Like it happened to somebody else. This is weird. I feel like I'm telling someone else's story, like these emotions don't even belong to me. And so, it's awesome when there's a particular breakthrough and things can change. So let's dive into it, like for yourself. If you've experienced, almost everybody in the Western world at some point in time has experienced some kind of traumatic event. And if you have symptoms of post-traumatic stress, when you have reoccurrent, unwanted, distressing memories of the event. It replays itself over and over again. Or you literally feel like you're in the event, like having a flashback or having nightmares. If you sometimes there's a severe emotional distress or a physical reaction to something that reminds you of the event. I have a friend or one of my clients found his neighbor dead and right next door, and he's like, every time I mow my lawn, I have to go by the place where I found my neighbor, and it freaks me out. We ran him through tactical resilience process, and he's like, well, of course I remember it, but I have no reaction to it. And that's the key. What tactical resilience process does is it doesn't remove the memory. We would have to go into some kind of electroshock and fry your brain for you to have a memory go away. But what we do is change the neurological reaction. Okay, the stress reaction, the anxiety reaction of the memory, or being in a place that where it actually happened. I had another guy that there was a place on the freeway where he would always get triggered. The second he went by this exit, he would there was a traumatic event that occurred that happened at that exit, and we ran the process on him, and it was really funny. I go, so how was your drive home? He said, oh my God. I was like 4 miles past the exit, and when I remembered that I forgot to get upset when I drove by the exit, and to this day, which is like a year later, still has zero response when he drives down that part of the freeway. So it can be a big major thing. It can be a little thing, meaning there's major freaking traumas, and there's many levels of trauma. Whatever affects you, the way that it affects you, that causes the distress, is all that counts. We don't rate like, well, you had somebody die in your arms, so that's a really bad one. You crashed your car, so what? Right? No, because how you process a particular event has to do with the impact that it has on you. It's not rating an event that's better or worse, or you were in the army and in battle, so you're worse than this other person who was in the inner city and got mugged. Okay, however your body processes the trauma. One can be just as bad as the other, although on the outside we could rate it, which is what prevents a lot of people from coming. Oh, well, I just got beat up by this guy. It wasn't like I was in the army and had my friend's head land in my lap after hitting an IED, but trauma isn't rated like you had a good trauma. Societally, we looked at certain ways of rating trauma. That's just bullshit, man. You got to just drop all that. If you are having an anxious response, if you are having unhelpfulness, or if you are having flashbacks, if you are having emotional distress, it's post-traumatic stress. And it doesn't matter from a larger view who has the worst response, or who had the worst situation. The response is the response, and we want to fix it. So if you're going to realize your greatness, if you're going to come into the best that you can be, I want to help you heal from the distress in your life, whether it's a childhood incident of having a teacher tell you that you're a piece of garbage and you shouldn't, do whatever. I literally had a woman burst into tears when I handed her a drum at an event I was doing, a drumming event, because her third grade teacher told her she didn't have any rhythm and she should never play a musical instrument. Well, 2 hours later, she was ripping on that drum, and she leads drum circles in her hometown now. So there can be a turnaround. This process is powerful. It is effective. And I want to help you get rid of these barriers that are preventing you from coming into your greatness. So if you feel like you have a problem, if you have a hard time sleeping, if you have anxiety, distress, get in touch with me and let's get rid of that stuff, get you functioning at the highest level possible, get you coming into your greatness and looking up.